Hello everyone, this is Bob and Threadbare, and welcome back to The Longest Journey. So there's one new place that we haven't visited yet. Figure we should head over, see what there is to see there.
It's a stone dragon gazing down into the center of the dome like it's guarding the entrance. It's a magnificent piece of work.
If you say so. Not sure how you'd have a good perspective on that.
The dragon's mouth is pointing straight down at the middle of the floor. It's emerald green, teeming with life and carrying the pleasant, salty scent of distant shores. It's a circular hollow about 20 centimeters across and about 5 centimeters deep. It's a small recess about the size of my fist with a thin duct extending from the recess to the circular hollow in the middle of the floor. There are 3 others just like it, arranged with equal distance to each other in a circle and all connected via a duct to the center of the floor.
Surprisingly descriptive. Although that looks a fair bit larger than your fist. Okay, so library's not that impressive if this is the only floor of it. And did they put in a saltwater pool underneath it? It does not seem like a good idea.
It's a pool of seawater. You'd think that it'd be a bad idea to have a pool inside a library on account of the moisture, but I guess magic makes everything possible.
I don't know. Still sounds like a bad idea to me.
The water's pretty cold.
Especially since it's salt water. That's like extra caustic.
It's a rusty wheel. It's stuck.
So I guess we'll be headed back here at some point. But for now, let's bother the librarian.
It's one of the Sentinel Minstrel.
Oh, goodness me, I didn't hear you come in. By the way, you haven't seen Volume 6 of the Complete Annotated History of the Northlands, have you? I could have sworn it was here yesterday.
Sorry, no.
I guess someone else must have taken it. I try to tell them to write down what they borrow on the list, but they never listen. Only last week I spent 3 hours searching the entire enclave for the second scripture of the ballads, the scripture of song, before I realized that Vestrum Tobias was studying it back in the city. Now, such incidents could be avoided if only, and this applies to you too, young lady, people would sign out the books they borrow when they borrow them and sign them back in when they're done. Such a simple procedure. It shouldn't take more than a few seconds to jot down your name and the name of the book you borrow. It makes my job so much easier. Now, which book did you want me to find for you?
And this is why libraries make you check out your books.
Are you Minster Yaren?
Yes, of course. What a silly question.
How would I know? I don't know you.
I am Minstrom Yeren, keeper of the great library of Mercuria. In fact, this is the greatest library of all the Northlands.
Really?
Perhaps of the entire world. Although they say the Dark People have a library as big, if not bigger, than this one. But of course, we're not allowed anywhere near there. Have you been there?
I don't think...
What a silly question. Of course you haven't. You're not of the Dark People, are you? You don't look like any Dark People I've ever seen, so I can't see how you could possibly... Now, where did Volume 6 disappear to?
So, can we get back on topic?
Tobias said I should talk with you.
Tobias? Vestrum Tobias? I haven't seen him for... Well, he was in last week, but before that it must have been Days, at least. How is he? Still eating enough for 2 mules? I must tell you of this funny story I heard the other day, of how Vestrum Tobias eats enough for a table full of minstrum. Or was it one Elguan? Although the Elguan don't, as a rule, eat very much at all. Did you know that the Elguan can smell water more than half a day's journey away? Amazing, amazing creatures, perfectly suited for life in the desert. The balance provides, that's for certain. The balance provides.
So can we get back on topic?
Vestrum Tobias recommended that I look at some books.
Books is what we do best here at the Enclave, that is for certain. Which book would you like to see?
Okay, so here's where we get some options. Let's start with the top.
I'm looking for some information, but I'm not sure which book to ask for.
No matter. I know a great deal about most of the books in here. What topic intrigues you?
I need to find out which 4 magical people of Arcadia were given a piece of the stone disc that serves as the key to the Guardian's realm.
The stone disc of the balance, yes? Yes. There could possibly be something on that in... let me check. Just one moment.
Alright, now let me just speed you up here.
I did find something of interest. I'll leave it here for you to read.
Alright, so just so you understand, none of the books we're about to read here have any plot significance directly. Like, none of these books you have to read to finish the game.
Are you done? Let me... Oh!
Could I see some more books?
Oh, certainly. What a silly question.
I'm looking for...
No matter.
I'd like to learn more about dragons, about the Dragakin.
Oh, yes. We have some wonderful books on that topic. Stay here.
However, the books do add some backstory to Arcadia, and to the setting as a whole. And so I'm leaving these open just long enough for you guys to pause the video and read them if you so choose. If you don't so choose, then please bear with me. Some of these books are actually fairly long. Not that you can tell from the amount of page they use.
Are you... Oh!
Could I... I'm looking for a story called The Silver Spear.
Yes, a fanciful tale if I ever saw one, but a charming one. Did you know that I'm often paid visit by adventurers wishing to read everything available on the spear, so that they too can set out on their foolish quests?
Yeah, don't you just hate those adventurers?
Well, they pay for my bread, milk, and butter with their contributions to the coffers, so I shouldn't be too critical of them. But they care not about the books. They care only about what the books can give them.
I care. About the books, really.
I can tell. So, the Silver Spear of Gorimon, then?
I wonder if April's ever seen a real book.
I did.
Like, I imagine she would know what they would look like. Oh wait, no, she does have books in her library. She just doesn't read them. That's her deal. I remember that now. Quite the story, this one.
Are you done?
Could
Alright, looks like there's only 2 books left.
A book on the history of Marcuria would be interesting.
Ah, an extensive subject, to be sure. I will do my best.
By the way, in case you were wondering about the page use, I think it has to do with the fact that I'm upscaling the game. Like, the text, the font, did not upscale, so it's taking up half the book page. Well, this is pretty extensive. Comparatively, if nothing else. And it just keeps going. Huh. Oh, no, there's the end.
Are you...
Alright, one last book.
Oh.
Could I... I'd like to read some Arcadian folk tales.
A favored topic of mine. I have just what you're looking for.
I wonder why April keeps poking him in the armpit. Seems a bit rude. Well, there's a couple of stories with this one. Nice.
Are you done?
Alright, well, I hope at least some of you read some of that. Because otherwise that was like 10 minutes gone. Anyway, we've got another lead, since that didn't turn up anything, of the god who fell into the sea. Obviously, to learn about that, we need to talk to a sailor. I mean, not that asshole. We need to talk to an old sailor. So let's do so.
Hello again, old man.
It be you.
I'd love to hear some more maritime stories.
Sure, sweetie, I'd be happy to. What story you be wanting to hear now?
Something specific, for once.
Have you heard a story about a god who fell from the sky into the sea?
Aye, that I be having. Although that be a story of man-eating mermen who ravaged the sea of songs, swallowing sailors whole and spitting their bones out to dry. Are you sure you be up for hearing such a cruel tale?
I've heard worse.
Ye be a tough little lady, be you not? All right. Well, like I be telling yous, the sea of song surrounding the island kingdom of Gien be a treacherous sea where countless vessels have disappeared without a trace. Now, this be near 30 long winters ago, mind, during me second term as captain of the trader Lucky Lady. We've been crossing the Sea of Songs for 2 seasons, and we'd yet to be seeing any sign of the dreaded bloodthirsty mermen who lurk in the waters off the Guyenne coast. That night we be laying still with our sails down, awaiting the wind to pick up and carry us north to Marcuria, when we be hearing a frightful scream a-coming from the port side of the Lady Luck. I be the first to rush over on account of me having me arm down the apple barrel, We just been to Arras to pick up 100 barrels of sweet Guyenne apples. And as luck would have it, I be there just in time to witness Sally Barney's horrible fate. He be in the water, screaming and waving his arms, and the water around him be red as a midwife's arms after a grueling birth.
I get the picture. Go on.
Then I be seeing, I glimpse a large, shiny, sleek body be pulling Sally down and swallow him whole. It be the merman come to claim the body of the sailor who dare cross their sea.
Are you sure it wasn't a shark?
What?
Big fish with sharp teeth and dead black eyes and a large triangular fin on top?
Ye mean a black-eyed snapjaw? I guess it could have been, but it be no snapjaw. It be the dreaded merman of the Sea of Songs.
Where does the sea god fit into all of this?
Aye, I be coming to that. You see, the bloodthirsty mermen be not only happy with cannibalizing sailors, but they be sacrificing their own to their dark old sea god.
Actually, unless the mermen are human, they wouldn't really be cannibals if they ate humans.
Blood sacrifices to their dreaded god who lives on the bottom of the sea. Aye, that be the truth of the mermen, fierce and bloodthirsty cannibals of the Sea of Songs.
Thanks. Good story.
Aye.
Oh, that was diary-worthy.
I'm all storied out for now. Thanks.
Aye, ye tell me when you want more, right?
See you later.
If I not be dead, aye.
Well, isn't that morbid? Anyway, let's look at April's diary here. And yeah, she's talking about how she learned about the mermen of the Sea of Songs, and how that might be connected to the god of the sea, the fallen god of the sea. But, maybe the other sailor will know more about that. The other captain, perhaps, I should say.
Hello.
Uh-huh.
Well, let's start with the original topic, just in case.
Do you know anything about a god that fell from the sky into the sea?
Of course. You find fallen gods most everywhere these days. They're an air and a hand.
Really?
No, of course not. There are no fallen gods in the sea. It wouldn't make much sense, would it? If the sea was full of gods just lying about the seabed.
So you've never heard of such a thing happening?
Now you got it.
Let's see if the second question has better luck.
Did you ever hear of the mermen of the Sea of Songs?
You mean the bloodthirsty cannibal merman of the Sea of Songs?
That's it.
Never heard of them.
Well, you gotta give me a hard time.
Are you sure you've never heard of the mermen of the Sea of Songs?
Be quiet. Shh. Not so loud.
What's up with the shushing?
Legend says that if you speak openly of the bloodthirsty cannibal merman of the Sea of Songs, they will hunt you down until they've caught you and devoured you.
And you believe this legend?
No, I'm just trying to scare you off.
Bye.
God damn it. Alright, we're not gonna get anything more out of this guy. Let's see who else we can talk to about this. After we skip our way into the city proper. Alright. Well, yeah, maybe Westhouse knows something. Just maybe.
Hello? I have some more questions for you.
Shoot.
Did you ever hear a story about a god who fell from the sky?
Stories aren't my thing, April. You should visit a library. I'm sure you'll find some stories in the books. I know the Sentinel have a library somewhere near the city. I've also heard rumor of people with wings who do nothing but observe and record history through stories. But I don't know if that's all it is. A rumor. Still, if you're looking for stories, it may be wise to check it out and see if you can find them.
Well, hell.
What did you say about the flying people?
They're supposed to be great storytellers, and they've been observing this world for a very long time. But it could only be a rumor.
I don't have it.
Very well.
Thanks.
Alright, now we got a new lead. God of the Sea, Merfolk, and now creatures of the sky who are famous for storytelling. Might as well. Whether or not they're connected, they might know something.
Oh, good.
Could I see?
Oh, sir.
And he specified the library a couple times there, so...
I'm looking.
No.
Yeah, more topics here.
I've heard rumors about mermen who live beneath the Sea of Songs, and I'd like to find out more about them.
Mermen in the Sea of Songs. Let me see what I can find, yes?
New spot. Alright, what have we got? Looks like an encyclopedia entry. Fairly short one, too.
Are you done?
Well, that was a bust, but we got one more topic.
Oh, good.
Could I? I'm looking. Are there any books about flying people who observe and tell stories?
Winged storytellers, hmm? Let me see what I can find. Hold on.
What must his organizational system be like?
I did find...
The island of Elias, near the Briston Atoll. Maybe I should try to go there.
Aha, finally a destination.
Are you done?
Yep, and sure enough, that's worthy of another page in the diary. Alright, we've got someplace to go. We know a guy who's got a ship. Let's talk to him about it.
Hello.
Uh-huh.
Do you know the island of Elias?
The vacation paradise of the ancient Delmari? Certainly.
How do I get there?
It's near the Briston Atoll, but boats rarely travel directly to Briston from Marcuria. You'd have to travel via Guyenne.
Can you give me a lift to Guyenne on your ship?
There are 3 problems with that scenario. Number 1, there's no wind, so we can't set sail south. Number 2, I lost my navigator a few weeks past, and I have yet to find his replacement. And number 3, you're a woman. We don't let women on board the White Dragon.
Isn't that a bit sexist?
Sexy is just what I worry about. What with a boat full of men being out at sea for months at a time?
Not sexy, sexist.
I'm a sailor, girl. What do you expect? Good bedside manners?
I'd really appreciate it if I could hitch a ride with you to Guyenne.
Ain't gonna happen. Sorry.
Bye.
Dang it, this guy is just full of dead ends. Well, still, we got a backup sailor.
Hello again, old man.
Eh?
Maybe he could be useful.
Do you know the island of Elias?
Aye, I be knowing lots and lots about the feared Isle of Elias.
It's feared? How?
Because it be a place of cannibals.
You really don't know anything about the island of Elias, do you?
No, I do not.
Do you know how I can get passage on a boat going south?
Aye, coin be the way, as me beloved wife always be saying. 'Course she'd be running off with a wealthy merchant while I be away at sea. Women never trusted one I didn't pay for again.
I don't have much coin at all.
And I be at a loss, as do ye, unless...
I need coin to travel in a boat unless... what?
Unless I be calling in a favor with the good Captain Horatio Nebave, who be traveling to Guyenne as soon as the wind be picking up.
What kind of favor?
Oh, he be owing me from back when I was his captain.
Well, damn.
Would you cash in your favor with Nebave if I got your bird back?
Aye, I be promising anything to get me friend back. It be a deal.
See you later.
If I not be dead, aye.
Alright, now we got some short-term goals here. Okay, so how do I get directly to the dock from here? Ah, here we are. Okay, back to the marketplace, back to the coin merchant, and the bird he has a surprise. Is the bird saying anything? Wait, hang on. Just a...
Look like a serving maid. It's a talking bird.
I guess not.
How about a game of cups today?
Okay, let's go.
Just place your bet, investment, on the table and the game will begin.
Okay, so here's the thing. The game is not throwing a game of skill at us here.
I got a whole handful of these Arcadian iron coins.
Instead, you need to remember that the coins are iron
It's
and
a magnetized screwdriver.
you got a screwdriver that's magnetized.
Here's my coin. Now, how do I play?
I place one cup on top of your coin like so. Then I shuffle them like so.
Like I said, not even a chance here.
Now, you guess which cup hides your coin. If you get it right, you win another coin. 3 in a row, and you win a prize.
Yep, no chance of just guessing this. Instead, we've got to cheat a little.
Hey, that cup moved.
Must be a heavy coin.
It's gotta be this one.
That's correct, but that's... You used magic, didn't you? You used your magic wand.
Nah, your amulet didn't light up, did it?
No, but it's impossible.
Because you use magic yourself? Because nobody's supposed to ever win your game? They have a name for people like you, sir. Con artist.
What? I'm outraged! I'm outraged!
Whatever. I want my prize.
Prize? You don't get a prize for winning once. Especially when you're cheating. You cheat.
You want me to call the city guard? I demand a prize.
Oh, by the gods of gambling. Here, take this and leave me be.
A calculator? Where did you get this?
Oh, I don't know. Won it off some guy who got it from someone else who's supposedly been in stock. It's it's a valuable souvenir from the mysterious and elusive world of logic. Now, would you please let me be? Let someone else play. Yes?
Lots of accusations getting thrown around here.
Strangely enough, it's an old-fashioned calculator. Like the ones they used back in, the Elizabethan times.
And yet she can identify a 200-year-old car by sight.
I'm not talking to you, you cheat!
It's a talking bird.
We still need that bird, so what else do we have to do here? Well, maybe we can force the game again by doing this.
I want to play again.
No, 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 not you, lady. Get your errand off my table.
I have a right to play. I didn't use magic.
You did use that magic wand there. That's magic to me.
No, it's science, not magic. There's no sign that says no science allowed now, is there?
What do you want from me?
I want to play.
Sorry, lady, that magic wand of yours will put me out of business. I'd rather close up for the day than let you play another game.
He can't play, but he does seem fairly interested in the screwdriver. Maybe we could just give that to him.
I'll make a trade with you. My magic wand for one of your prizes, and then I'll leave your game alone.
What's the catch?
No catch. You get a magic wand, and I get one of your exotic prizes.
All right. Fair enough. Which prize would you like?
The talking bird.
That scraggly heap of... A fantastic choice, young lady. Hold on a second and I'll get him for you. A fantastic choice, and I really, really mean that.
Yeah, that last question there was... because he could have screwed with his game before talking or arranging the deal with Bird. Yeah, right up down the pants. Skin-tight pants. Screw it.
So, you're Bird, huh?
Yeah. Wait a second. Did the old man send you to get me?
I guess he did. My name's April.
Oh, God, is there no escape? I mean, not that I like being cooped up in a cage for gamblers to gawk at and children to spit at all day, but give me a break. It's better than being locked away in a stinking chest. Thanks a whole bunch for rescuing me, April.
You're welcome.
No, hey, that's not what I meant. I was being sarcastic. Do you know what sarcastic means? Speak all tongue? Yes,
No, actually, I don't. I speak English.
English? I don't know where you're from, lady, but you're weird. Okay, so let me go already, all right? Enough with the I'm human so I can boss the bird around shtick. We're all impressed.
Sorry, I promised the old man I'd win you back. I need a favor from him badly.
Yeah? So what's so important you'd sacrifice a bird's happiness and well-being?
The fate of two worlds, billions of people, and the balance.
Yeah? So... No, forget it.
So were you always just Bird? Or did you have a better name?
No. It's always been Bird. My full name is That Damn Bird. I learned that when I was 2 weeks old. That damn bird, the old man would say. No good ball of feathers. Then he beat me with a stick.
Really?
No. He'd just stick me in the chest and forget about me. Which is almost as bad as beating, believe you me.
I'm sorry to hear that, Bird. You know, if you were my bird, I think I'd call you Crow.
Yeah, well, I'm my own bird, lady, and I don't... Crow. You'd call me Crow? That's a pretty good name. It's a proper name, at least, not just an insult.
Anyway, I guess I'd better get you back to your master bird. He's pining for you.
All he's pining for is coin to gamble with.
It's really none of my business. Sorry.
Sure you are.
Crow is also the name of a sarcastic robot that likes to make fun of movies.
It's Crow.
So he's most of those, just he doesn't exist in a world with movies, that's all. Alright, let's get it back to his, old man.
Here's your bird, sir. It wasn't easy, but I got him back. I sure hope you're grateful.
Firebird. Blessed be the balance, me faithful friend and companion be back.
No, 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 not back in the chest, not in the chest! Ah! Ah! Ah!
Well, that was unceremonious.
Now can you help me get passage on a ship?
I be a man of me word. Speak ye with Captain Horatio Nebeve of the White Dragon, the ship behind yous. Tell him Umbrianos be sending yous to cash in on that old favor he be owing me.
Thanks, old man.
Ire.
So is Umber a nickname? Because I think Janos is a first name.
Hello.
Uh-huh.
You know old Umbrianos, don't you?
The old drunk? Aye, he be a good captain once. But ever since he lost his ship, he hasn't been much worth to anyone.
Be that as it may, you do owe him a favor, right?
Aye, that I do. He saved my life more than once. And I wouldn't be captain of this beautiful lady if it weren't for him.
Guess what? I'm here to cash in on that favor.
I'll be damned. What did you do for the old geezer? Promise him your hand in marriage?
Don't you mind that, old boy. Just get ready to sail south. You're giving me a lift to the island of Elias. I mean, since you're already heading for Gien.
I am? That could prove a little tricky.
How come?
For one, there is no wind. That accursed alchemist up north has put some kind of spell on the wind. Clax, I believe his name is, Roper Clax. Lives in a bloody rock somewhere beyond Riverwood. As long as he's got his dirty claws on the wind, this vessel ain't going nowhere. Then there's a little problem with my crew. I can't very well leave the harbor without a navigator, and my last one decided he didn't much care for the sea anymore and went off to marry a serving maid.
But, okay. Let's say I manage to free the wind and find you a new navigator. Then will you drop me off on Elias?
You think you will be able to defeat Clax, free the wind, and find me a new navigator? By Jaw's pus-filled left eye, if you do such a trick, then I'll take you wherever you wish to go. Most likely they'll be holding your funeral within the week, girl. Just leave the madman be and let the army deal with him.
Never you mind, as long as you keep your promise and take me to Elias.
What's with Elias, anyhow? It's been deserted for hundreds of years, ever since the Dolmari fell victim to the Great Plague.
I need to visit the Elation people, to listen to some of their stories.
As if there aren't enough stories here. It takes all sorts, that be for sure.
Alright. Now we just gotta go defeat an alchemist. That sounds easy enough. Alright, so I know I said I wanted some alternate history works for my alternate history corner, but it's a little weird to get a couple Confederate victory alt history things in a row. I'm not saying that I mind that Douglas Elder and today's patron Ben chose the same topic. I'm just hoping I'll see more variety in future alternate histories. But regardless of any belly aching on my part, today's film is called CSA, the Confederate States of America, and it came out in 2004. The story about the story. Okay, let me just lead in by explaining the genre. CSA is part of what's called the mockumentary genre, and despite having mock in the name, they aren't all supposed to be funny. I mean, that is where the genre name comes from, mock, as in mocking the subjects of the supposed documentary, but you could also say that mock means mock-up, a quickly made fake that resembles the real thing. In other words, a mockumentary is a movie that's cut together and narrated like a real documentary, but it's a satire and it's fictional. Most mockumentaries are supposed to be funny, but it's a very dry kind of humor. The most famous example would be 1984's This Is Spinal Tap, which follows around an incompetent band that doesn't actually exist. Well, except that it sort of does, because the movie came out with a soundtrack album full of all of the original songs, and the actors who played Spinal Tap would go on to release several more records. The point is that the movie was a spoof of rock and metal bands, and of the documentaries the filmmakers would create about them. CSA is the creation of Kevin Wilmot, a director and screenwriter whose works focus on black and other minority rights in the United States. His first big film was 9th Street, made in 1999, and it was about some of the black folks in a dying town in Kansas in 1968. It was filmed in black and white and released to art houses and film festivals, so if none of you have heard of it, that's probably why. However, you're much more likely to have heard of CSA. Kevin Wilmot has said that he was primarily inspired by Ken Burns' famous documentary series about the Civil War. The premise of the movie is that what you're watching is a documentary created by a British filmmaker and broadcast on a Confederate TV network, and so the viewpoint is relatively objective, but still ultimately acceptable to Confederate censorship. The movie also features some Confederate commercial breaks, sort of like RoboCop or Starship Troopers. Much like Wilmot's first movie, CSA was originally part of the film festival circuit, but then IFC Films discovered it at Sundance, and they gave it a theatrical release in the United States in 2005. The theatrical run was limited to 28 theaters, but it managed to make around $750,000, and it got a full release on home and digital media. As a result, it's easy enough to find if you go looking for it today. Wilmot remains an active and activist filmmaker, most notably making The Only Good Indian in 2009, a movie about the Indian boarding schools of the early 20th century. He was also one of the screenwriters for Black Klansman, a Spike Lee movie about a black detective who infiltrated the ranks of the Ku Klux Klan in 1979. But that's enough about other movies. It's time now to focus on the story. Today's recap is going to be a little different, mostly because CSA is in itself a recap of nearly 150 years of history. So I'll describe the structure of the mockumentary and the commercials, but other than that, I'll be summarizing the alternate history it presents. CSA starts out with a commercial, one of those vague, family-friendly insurance spots, except there's a smiling black slave in the background. It then has a commercial for the documentary, which says it's famously controversial, from Britain, and may be unsuitable for children and servants. Now we get to the feature film, and notably it uses the Confederate battle flag instead of the less famous national flag that flew over the Confederate capital. We then cut to some 50s educational short about how slavery was a massive part of the antebellum economy, both for the cotton fields to the south and the textile mills in the north. The history narration begins, and it starts the same as real life. Lincoln gets elected, the southern states secede, and the Civil War begins. The Battle of Antietam happens, the Emancipation Proclamation happens, but in this timeline, the Confederate Secretary of State, Judah P. Benjamin, manages to secure European recognition of the CSA, along with military aid. With French and British divisions on the field, the South wins Gettysburg. General Lee takes Washington a few months later, and the Confederacy secures its independence not long after. Hell, more than just independence. With secession deemed legal, Lincoln's acts are deemed war crimes, and he has to flee along the Underground Railroad with Harriet Tubman. However, both are captured. While Tubman is executed, Lincoln is exiled to Canada to live a long and impotent life. And of course, D.W. Griffith, Mr. Birth of a Nation, makes a silent comedy about Lincoln's escape. We jump back to commercials. The first one is Duke Cooter, selling Sambo brand motor oil to a couple of guys driving the General Lee. Little Black Sambo, in case you didn't know, was an intensely racist term in the mid-20th century and died during the Civil Rights Movement. Next is an ad for an old 50s sitcom called Leave It to Beulah, about a hapless black house slave in a modern white home. And aside from being a slave, that was a popular character archetype for a long time. On with the show. Following the war, President Davis annexes the whole northern United States for some reason, and so the South begins a successful war of conquest. New York City and Boston burn, Nathan Bedford Forrest commits more atrocities on resisting black populations, and General Lee calls for emancipation. Not because he thinks that black folks are equal, of course, but because he thinks that black slaves will cause too much trouble if they're kept as property. Lee's main opposition is a new senator named John Ambrose Fauntleroy, one of the few original creations of the movie. President Davis mulls over the question, and we see a 1940s RKO movie about Davis featuring a British actor in deep blackface who delivers his slave vernacular lines in a posh English accent. Davis's solution is to create an income tax for northern citizens, and to abate that tax for northern slave owners. At the same time, everyone with even vaguely dark skin is rounded up into cattle pens across the nation to be either claimed by southern slave owners or sold to northerners. Even black slave owners in the South are sold into slavery. In response to the Davis Plan, abolitionists rally around figures like Walt Whitman and Susan B. Anthony, both of whom were anti-slavery in real life, Anthony in particular. They also start leaving for Canada, including several famous names like Henry David Thoreau, Harriet Beecher Stowe, and Mark Twain. Susan B. Anthony would start her women's suffrage movement in Canada, and she'd succeed in 1912. The new Confederacy starts having trouble with rebellious slaves now that they can't buy their freedom or flee north, and so the theories of Dr. Samuel A. Cartwright come into fashion. Cartwright invented a mental disorder called drapetomania, an irrational desire of black people to be free. This is basically used as an excuse to employ cruel and unusual punishments on slaves who attempt to escape. Commercial time again. The first is for the Cartwright Institute for the Study of Freedom Illnesses, and go figure, but the training there lasts months rather than years. Then there's an ad for a cop-style show about capturing runaway slaves. Back with the show, the Confederacy is continuing to crack down on its slave population, to the point where the late 19th century is called the Confederate Holocaust. During this time, the Confederacy demands the return of escaped slaves from Canada, but Frederick Douglass, the famous black rights leader, convinces Canada's parliament to refuse the demand. The Confederacy doesn't go to war over this, but Confederate politicians still haven't forgiven Canada for its decision. Meanwhile, the wars against the Native Americans proceed basically the same as in our timeline, complete with boarding schools meant to civilize their children and eradicate their culture. For Chinese immigrants, the story starts the same, but then the CSA declares that all Chinese workers are now slaves, and for some reason this doesn't slow down Chinese immigration. Then, in 1895, the Confederate Congress outlaws all non-Christian religions, begrudgingly including Catholicism, and allowing a small number of Jews to live on a Long Island reservation, while expelling the rest. Also, the Northern Redemption happens and reconciles the two sides of the war. Another commercial break. There's a commercial for a government hotline about people trying to pass as white, and then there's a commercial for Darky toothpaste. Now begins the empire-building phase of the CSA's history. It starts with the Spanish-American War that actually happened, but then the Confederacy continues by conquering Mexico. Yeah, all of Mexico. The Mexicans aren't enslaved, but they are subjected to segregation from their white overlords. The CSA then proceeds to conquer the rest of Central and South America up through the World War I period. This does, however, result in massive military casualties. Commercials again. The first ad is for the Shackle, basically a tracking chip and an armband that you can't take off. Next up is the Coon Chicken Inn, and oh boy, now I'm really starting to feel depressed. Especially since this was a real chain restaurant. Right, now we're up to 1929. The Confederacy controls most of the American supercontinent and the whole of the Caribbean, but it still gets hit hard by the stock market crash. So, to get out of the Great Depression, the CSA reopens the slave trade, exporting slaves from the home states to the rest of their American territories, and restarting slavery in African nations, often by threatening force, but mostly by, once again, exploiting the conflicts between African tribes. Meanwhile, Nazi Germany rises right on schedule, and Hitler meets with the similarly racist CSA government. Confederate leaders suggest enslavement instead of extermination to Hitler, and they otherwise promise to stay out of any wars Germany may have with its neighbors. On the other hand, the Confederacy starts a war against the growing Japanese Empire, but the Japanese are more tenacious than the CSA expected, and it forces them to train and arm black slaves and promise their freedom in exchange for fighting. The war ends with nuclear bombs, as in our timeline, but then the black soldiers are returned to their masters. Okay, more commercials. The first one is for Better Homes and Plantations. The second one is for the Gold Dust Twins, a racist cleaning product that, again, died out during the Civil Rights Movement. Now it's 1950, and the Confederacy is riding high off its successful Japanese War. But then the nation suffers attacks from a Canadian-based anti-slavery terrorist group, and the Canadian government refuses to hand them over. So starts a Cold War between the CSA and Canada, with abolitionists standing in for communists. There's even a wall erected across the entire Canadian border. Meanwhile, and despite the CSA's neutrality, Nazi Germany falls and summit nations like Britain and France create an embargo to punish the CSA. Except for South Africa, naturally. As a result, the CSA avoids invading Canada and starts rationing. Commercial time. This one is for cigarettes, and I'll just show you the image here. And yes, this was also a real product. Oh, only one this time. It's 1960 now, specifically the debate between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. The two parties never switch sides in this timeline, so Kennedy is the Republican nominee. He's also pro-abolition, at least by CSA standards, but he still gets elected. Meanwhile, women's rights and suffrage only now gain a foothold in the Confederacy. Oh, and rock and roll appears in Canada, but when Elvis Presley does it, he gets arrested. President Kennedy starts speaking openly of abolition, and so he gets assassinated, right on cue. In response, slave rebellions erupt across the country, and the national legislature divides on party lines regarding what to do next. But then the social movement is utterly crushed by the 1970s. Oh, a news break. It's about slaves using Con-X, FedEx, to ship themselves to Canada. Next up is a commercial for a dangerous drug used to keep slaves docile. We now enter the 80s and Reagan's presidency, and like in our timeline, he leans on family values and Christian leaders. His government also starts making videos for slave training programs, and they promote propagandic TV shows and the Slave Shopping Network. It's the present now, right around the year 2000. The documentary's creators get a clandestine note from one of the slaves they tried to interview. The note leads them to an infamous Underground Railroad conductor named Big Sam, and Big Sam leads the team to an escaped slave who worked for the current head of the Fauntleroy family, a man who is also currently a Democratic presidential candidate. The former slave says that Fauntleroy V secretly has black ancestors, and so we get a Clinton-style sex scandal. Fauntleroy loses the primary and then takes his life, but it comes out later that he did not have any black genetics. The mockumentary ends by citing its sources, but I've been doing that throughout the summary, so I'll just say the end. The analysis. So, CSA is not trying to be historically realistic one bit. You can tell that right from the beginning, since the movie uses today's symbol of the Confederacy rather than the one they used historically. And then there's also the fact that the Confederacy somehow manages to be this unstoppable juggernaut, both militarily and culturally. But that's because it's not supposed to be realistic. The Guns of the South is a meditation on what might have been, and how the world might have been worse off, but would still be ultimately moving in the same direction, but CSA? CSA is about today. Specifically, it's about the family values conservatives of today, and the fact that you can trace their lineage all the way back to the slave-owning conservatives who seceded from the United States to protect their right to own other people as property. By having the Confederate States victorious at every junction, CSA creates the sort of dystopian paradise that such people would create if they hadn't been stopped time after time. And, since both timelines line up on several occasions, you can also see the times when they won. The family values conservatives were there when black men and women were regularly lynched and burned in the South. They were there to reconcile the North and the South by romanticizing the Civil War, and to throw black Americans, free and former slave alike, under the bus in the process. They were there when white men needed a scientific-sounding reason to declare minorities and women mentally ill, and wield that as an excuse to use tortures as treatments. They were there, cheering along when the United States fought Spain for its remaining colonies in 1898, and they were only disappointed that we didn't keep going. They were there for the rise of fascism, and while they objected to Hitler's extreme methods, they didn't object to his racist propositions, even though America's definition of whiteness is much less specific than Hitler's definition of Aryan. America's family values were there when we prevented Chinese immigrants from becoming citizens, when we forced Native Americans into culture-destroying boarding schools, and when we rounded up our Japanese citizens into internment camps during World War II. They were there when we let black men fight for America but refused to acknowledge them afterwards. They were there making racist products that were popular throughout the first part of the 20th century, including a couple that are still popular today because we've forgotten how loaded the words aunt and uncle were back when slavery still existed. It was the family values set that objected to the social changes of mid-century America, objected to rock and roll, second-wave feminism and pacifism, and who would have been just fine if we had gone all in on Vietnam and annexed them to replace the now independent Philippines. They were there to roll their eyes at JFK, that progressive Irish Catholic, and to fight the civil rights movement state by state and inch by inch. They were there when gay men and women first started coming out and demanding equality, and they were tying them to their rear bumpers and dragging them across gravel roads. They were there when Reagan reached out to American family values and the religious right in 1980. And when home videos took off, they started making all kinds of conservative movies and instructional videos that supported their beliefs. They were there in the 1990s, demanding that people forget that slave owners would regularly rape their slaves, and as a result of that, people labeled both black and white today have mixed blood. And family values conservatives are still very much around today. In some ways, I would say that this movie is saying, be thankful for what you have. But I don't mean that sentence in the way that a lot of people mean that. A lot of people will say, be thankful for what you have, because that's all you're gonna get. But when I say it, I'm looking back on history and saying, be thankful for what you have, because it's a lot more fragile than you think. So don't take what you have for granted, and never stop fighting to keep it, to expand what you have. Because if you think that it's hopeless to keep going, if you think that you should just give up, you should remember that things can always get worse. CSA represents this worse reality, and so I believe what it's saying is to keep fighting to keep that world from happening any more than it already has. Thanks for joining me again for today's movie review. I hope I'll see you next time for a Neil Gaiman book about the world beneath London.